Hey, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, long time collector, and fortunately and very blessed to have also gotten to work in the toy and action figure industry, many times on toys that I actively collect. And staring at this toy here, which is not moving at all because we all know outside of Toy Story, toys are inanimate. It is a Star Wars action figure from the 80s. And seeing a packaged toy brings back a lot of memories. But there's another side to packaging. And by that, I mean the back side. There's a reverse. There's a back panel. And back panels have been changing a lot in the last few years. And I want to address that because, well, I get a lot of questions on the comment section. Toys have changed a lot over the years, and likewise, the back panel has changed a lot. There are toys from back when we were kids where the back panel was a piece of art. It was just as much part of the toy, and staring at it and staring at that cross-cell and all the information on there was very important. And that's actually exactly the key, is the backs used to have a lot of info, and that's kind of gone away. So why is that? Well, as I said, I've been lucky enough to work in the toy industry, and I spent the first 10 years of that working for a company most people have heard of, Mattel. And I worked in their packaging design group, specifically their Hot Wheels packaging design group. I was a copywriter, which meant I was the person who came up with the names for the actual Hot Wheels, but I was also in charge of translating the packaging into other languages. I mean, I didn't do the actual translating, but I would write English copy that would work for foreign releases. And why is this? Well, in the consumer good industry, which includes toys, a package is considered real estate. And what I mean by that is you essentially, in the start of packaging creation, have blank space with nothing on it. No logos, no images, no instructions, nothing. Just shapes that are basically blank. And when you're translating packaging for foreign markets, you have to find ways to make sure that the real estate, the room you have, can incorporate translations. So something that might have a very long blurb in one English, or one L, which is English, might have to be cut to one sentence. So, for foreign releases. Looking at the two most common things that are on the back of action figure card backs are the bio, which gives a little bit of a story of the character that you're buying and who they are and what they love to hunt and what they love to eat and maybe what they do on an afternoon. And then what's called a cross-sell, which is other figures in the assortment. And this has changed. It has changed to the point that we're now getting action figures that have no cross-sell and no bio. It's just legal lines and maybe one or two images of how the toy works. So why is this? Why such a change from the way things were for decades? I mean, and I'm going to use a lot of Star Wars examples simply because Star Wars toys have been around for such a long period of time, but even, the vintage collection, while it maintains a cross-sell and a bio, they're not as lengthy as the toys we had growing up. Growing up in the 80s, 90s, 70s, kind of did this out of order, 70s, 80s, 90s, that works better. The back of the package, the cross-sell and the bios really maximized space. They filled up every inch of the package. You could read about the toys you could buy, you could learn about them, see what features, what other characters were in the line, what were the action features of the figure and how did they get used, what figures were out now, what were coming soon. It was literally a plethora of information. Fast forward today and just using Indiana Jones to Indiana Jones, apples to apples, look at how much blank space is on this package. Yeah, there's beautiful art of Harrison Ford, but you have a lot of what was considered negative real estate space. Versus in the 80s, every inch of the package was covered. Cross-sell, instructions, bio, artwork. It was up and down the package. Every square inch was filled with something to teach the child, teach the consumer, teach the parent, the collector, whoever's buying it, more about the line. It was a communication tool. It was an advertising tool. You got to learn about who else you could buy. You got to learn more about the character you were buying. This pretty much hit its apex for G.I. Joe with the Larry Hama bios, which really changed things in the toy industry, where he created very lengthy bios for every single character, from your main characters to your grunts. So much so that the bios on the back of packaging really became part of the toy itself, where kids and collectors would cut them out and save them so they could remember who these characters were and read about them. And this was considered part of the content, and it was part of the value of the toy. That was simply just words and images, so very inexpensive to do from a production standpoint. I think that the back of the card really climaxed with something like Superpowers. While the bios were not as lengthy as G.I. Joe, the Superpowers line from Kenner really maximized both bio and cross-sell as elements. Two different elements that were very common on the back of the package, but they just did it the best, because you could look at the back and learn the entire story of the toy line. You got to see who was new, who was already out, who was coming soon, who's the character I'm buying, what are the names of the other characters, what are their vehicles, how does the action feature work. The way that the information was put into the back of the package on Superpowers just became such an experience. Now, when I worked on something like Masters of the Universe Classics at Mattel, as a brand manager, I got a lot of control over what went on the back because this wasn't a retail line, so there was no vested interest really from the packaging group of what it was going to look like. And I, in a way, got to just kind of dictate. I said, cross-sell, bio, bam, let's go with the two classics. Something else I worked on at Mattel was DC Universe Classics. Now, in this case, we also have cross-sell and bio, but you'll notice it's much more of a design-oriented layout, and that's because this was a retail line, there were a lot more cooks in the kitchen. Not only did you have the packaging group heavily involved with how the design was going to look, but you also had the licensor and even upper management, because since it was a retail line, it had many more eyes on it, and it was seen as a bigger, thing to be working on. So looking at other retail lines, something like Marvel Legends and how they do their cross-sell, so you still see things like a bio and the cross-sell on the back, but the bio is very short, it's 1 or 2 sentences, and it's in 4 different languages. The picture of the main character is there, which is called a hero shot, or hero image, even if it's a villain, the toy is the hero, so it's called a hero shot. And it's very big and it's very bold. It's really no different than flipping the package around and seeing who you're buying. And the cross-sell is really there to communicate the Build-A-Figure concept, which figures you need to buy, which limbs or torso or head pieces come with each character, and then you can assemble your bonus character. So let's go back to Star Wars, because again, this has pretty much been on the market continuously since '78, except for that whole '85 to '95 dark period where we only got bendies, but that's not important right now. The point is, for the good part of 45 years, we've had Star Wars figures, and Star Wars figures have been remade, they have been repackaged, there has been multiple versions of Star Wars packaging, so that's why it's a good example. So even in the very beginning, cross-sell and bios, or cross-sell and information. When we got to Power of the Force 2, you really got a bio in the whole Larry Hama concept, but this quickly changed to just a photograph of the figure. Why? Well, it's easier and cheaper to do it that way. When Power of the Jedi took over, while the bio and cross-sell was still there, more bio information was put in a pack-in, what's called accordion-style insert, which had more information about the character. Then, as this went away and went back to bio and action feature, bio and cross-sell, you still saw the elements there. And packaging iteration after packaging iteration after packaging iteration continued to have cross-sell, hero shot, and bio of the character, what you were buying, or in this case, a bio of the toy you were buying. Well, that changed recently, and it kind of came when Disney purchased the property. While there's a little bit of a cross-sell there, and I think 1 or 2 sentences of bio, well, the most modern or recent Star Wars 3 3/4 line for the episode 7, or actually, in 8, 8 in Solo, I think, had none of that. It was gone. For the first time, there was no cross-sell and no bio, nothing. The entire back panel was just legal information and an explanation of how the Force Link action feature would work. Again, in only 1 or 2 sentences because it's translated in multiple languages. So why this change? For years, for decades, consistency, bio, cross-sell, even on the Black series, you have so much negative space that is taken up by a black and white image of the character, again, what's called a hero illustration or hero shot if it's a photo, and then you have the bio, 2 or 3 sentences, now translated into 4 different languages. So why? even the cross-sell now is on the side of the packaging, and it's much more of a incentive to buy the full wave so you could display it as a piece of art, as opposed to just flipping the figure around and seeing the cross-sell. You're now required to buy multiple figures, put them together, and assemble the cross-sell yourself, which is an interesting payoff and an interesting bonus. But again, the back of the packaging has way less information. You can't even see a cross-sell of other characters. Now, all of this, the reason why, is because the world is flat. And no, not the Christopher Columbus concept, which, by the way, wasn't flat in his day either. That's a misconception that second grade teaches you. But the economic concept of the world is flat. And while we were kids, there were what were called foreign releases of toys, where you could get the same figure on a different card back in multiple languages that would only be shipped outside the US. And this continued all the way up through the 90s and in the early 2000s, where there would be a separate SKU that would ship to foreign markets. And these were translated. Now, you might think of them as bilingual packaging. The technical term in the industry was called a 2L, meaning two language, usually English, Spanish, or English, French. But there was also a 5L package, which, again, little shocker, had 5 languages on it. And this meant that as a copywriter in Hot Wheels, I would write a 5L version that would have less copy. Then there was the 9L, which might have almost no copy at all because every word has to be translated into 9 languages. So you had multiple different versions of the same SKU, 1L, 2L, 5L, and 9L. So why was this eliminated? Well, some of it is because of modern laws with inter-country commerce. For example, Canada requires French to be on every package. It has to be, or they won't take the toy. So if you want to see your product on store shelves in Canada, you have to offer a 2L package, English and French. So instead of developing a specific version for Canada, it's a lot more economical to just do one version of the package in 4L, which are the 4 main languages, and have that be the default package in order to get around all of these laws that have popped up in the last 10 years requiring certain languages to be on certain product in certain countries. Yeah, I'm simplifying a bit, but that really is how it works. And that's why cross-sells and the back of packaging have gone from being virtual works of art to essentially a utilitarian tool where one size fits all. Now, instead of having 1L for the US, 2L for foreign, 5L for more foreign, now it's one package in 4L for everyone. I hope this video clarified the changes in the back of packaging and why that's happened. It's been an interesting thing to observe from the inside and outside, and I'm very blessed to have been in that position. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, leave them below. Subscribe, ring a bell, all that. It helps bring more people to the channel, and that's what we love doing, sharing toy information. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.